Everyone can hear me. So good morning and welcome everyone to week 5, where we'll look into improving margins and controlling costs. So this is where we currently are. We've now covered 4 out of the 12 sessions. We've covered cash flow. We're now moving on to gross margin and cost control. After this, we'll look at the other key business drivers and then start thinking about our ultimate goal and how to achieve it. So for your goals, you need to be clear on what you're trying to achieve and by when, because a goal without a timescale is simply a wish. We need to be mindful that survival, success, and the odds are stacked against us. For those who do not have a very robust plan, the chances of success are all but zero. If your business plan is destined to be part of your estate, and your funding plans for future retirement, gambling on a 1 in 2,222 is not smart. Achieving your personal and business goals requires planning and process. We also highlighted the fact that we must focus on the lead indicators, the drivers of success, because if we only focus on the lag indicators, so the sales, profit, and cash in the bank, effective management control is impossible. You can only control the lead indicators that drive success, and to do that, you need to know where they are. Measure them, take action to move and improve the key drivers. Set targets and monitor progress over time. Remember when Sir David Brailsford took over the British cycling team in 2002, we'd only won the 1 gold in 67 years. In 2008 at the Beijing Olympics, the British team won 7 out of 10 gold medals and repeated that success in London 4 years later. The team then went on to win 3 of the last Tour de France events. How did they achieve that success? By breaking down everything that goes into cycling and finding ways to make small 1% marginal gains to achieve an overall increase in performance. What worked for the British cycling team will work for you. These webinars are to educate you on small, easy, but highly effective ways to increase your business performance. By finding and implementing ways to make small 1% marginal gains, success will look after itself. So in business, whilst your business will have more, these are the 7 business growth drivers. These 7 business growth drivers are by and large universal. Margins, overheads, new customer acquisition, customer retention, transaction value, purchase frequency, and the odd one out there on the screen, because it's not a business growth driver, it's cash flow. It's critical because if you run out of cash, there is no business. Once you have your 5-year goals and you've mapped your future at a high level, it makes sense to break down your targets. So where I want to be in 5 years. This can be articulated as, where do I want to be in this time next year? Then this can be broken down into quarters and months, or into quarters and weeks, as part of a regular 90-day planning cycle. We've already introduced Alex's KPI software and Alex's planned dividend payment, with 80k profit, up 33% on last year. Alex and the family are looking forward to paying themselves that 40k dividend this year. They're excited at the prospect of a full day in the sun or moving to a larger house, or a whole new wardrobe of clothes to wear. However, there is a problem, and it's down to cash flow. Despite the increase in profit in the bank, the bank is overdrawn 53k. So Alex has to explain to the family there will be no holiday this year, the house move is on hold, and existing clothes will have to last a bit longer. Never mind, because next year will be better. But will it? So last week we set some homework for this week. So along with cash flow, these numbers should be on the tip of your tongue. If not, they're on your profit and loss statement, which you'll hopefully know for the last month. So they are, what was your gross margin last year? What was your gross margin this year? Are you moving in the right direction? Is it improving? If not, why? And what is your target for improvement? If your gross margin improved by 1%, would you continue on the same basis or look to improve? After cash, gross margin is by far the next most important KPI. The most important KPI for your business, and if you don't know what that is, well, as you'll see, is really important for a whole host of reasons. Again, these are Alex's numbers, and to provide clarity, I'm going to flip them in the wrong, those in the wrong direction red, and those in the right direction green. As we saw again, debtor days were up, which means we're being paid later. Credit days are down, we're paying people sooner. Margins are up 1%. Cash is down 3.7. Quick overheads are down, which is good. We've lost 19 new customers. We've not retained 4.1. We've lost 12 pounds per transaction. Frequency has gone up. As we can see, there's a lot of red, but today we'll be discussing margins. This table shows Alex and KPI software performance for their key business growth drivers. We'll come on to customer acquisition, retention, transaction number, transaction value in future weeks. All of these are drivers of sales revenue, but today I'm going to focus on margins. Don't forget, last week we covered cash flow drivers and saw how this alone could make a very dramatic positive £106,000 in Alex's bank balance, and presumably his stress levels, and introduce some more harmony at home, whilst also contributing to a better work-life balance. In week 4, we saw how focusing on overheads, a 4% reduction, £769 per week, translated to a 40k saving, and a similar reduction in Alex's overdraft. Some KPIs have more impact on profit and cash than others, and some are easier to influence than others. What we do know about the gross margin rate is it improved by 1% from 34% to 35% last year. That does not sound like much, but with a £1 million turnover, that equates to a £10,000 increase. How can we increase our gross margins? If you're offering discounts, consider the impact, and unless there are incredibly compelling reasons to continue, stop, because this is the fastest way to run out of cash. Let's look at this in more detail by looking at the impact of discounting. So just quickly, we're going to have a look again about, here we can see the total revenue brought in by the business. Our variable costs are calculated and includes cost of sales and other direct costs in relation to that revenue. These are deducted to give us our gross profit. These will vary as the revenue varies, and also named operating expenses. The gross profit gives a visualization of how well the revenue is covering those direct costs. Without correct analysis, this can be over or underinflated. Fixed costs include overheads and other expenses, such as lease and rental payments, salaries, insurances, and interest payments. These are not affected by the volume of production. But finally, the small portion at the end is our net profit. So this is the pricing table for a discount. So let's run through some figures. If you trade with a 30% gross margin, your cost of sales is 70%. If you give a 10% discount, possibly because it's easy to calculate, by how much would you need to increase sales just to stand still? In other words, to generate the same profit. You'll see the increase in sales required is massive, 50%, and is extremely unlikely a 10% discount would increase sales volume by anything like 50%. And bearing in mind our cash flow discussion last week, even if it did, this could be disastrous for cash flow, not to mention the stress and hassle that can come from doing 50% more of everything just to keep up the increased sales. Let's take a look at the Olympics 2012 as an example of businesses not offering discounts. Tickets cost between £20.12p and £2,012. There were discounts for children under 16 and seniors only. No other discounts were offered. If venues were not filled, there were no discounts. There was a total focus on value. The original budget for London 2012 was to make sales of £376 million. They actually achieved sales of £660 million. That was more than the sales for Sydney 2000, Athens 2004, and Beijing 08 combined. So the first strategy to improve margins is don't discount. What is the second? Well, it should come as no surprise what the second strategy is: increase prices. We find owners are frequently very resistant to increasing prices because they feel it will alienate customers and cause a stampede as customers rush to switch to the competition. But that is very rare indeed. We would not advocate just increasing prices without telling customers and explaining why prices are increasing. It is a smart move to establish how satisfied or delighted your existing customers are with the service you provide. Price is something like 7th in the list of factors that buyers quote as being important when deciding who to purchase from. That's a good idea to understand how you are performing. We'll come on to that in next week when we consider strategies to reduce customer attrition. So we've looked at discounting, so let's look at the impact of price increases to understand how many customers you could risk losing to still be ahead. So this is a pricing table for a price increase. Let's now run through some figures. So if we take the same business and instead of discounting by 10%, we increase by 10%. We can see that the impact is massive. You could afford to lose 25% of your total sales by volume and you will still generate the same profit. Think about it, because a 25% reduction in sales volume would have other benefits and could lead to a reduction in costs, as well as stress and hassle. At the same time, it's giving you more time to look after your loyal customers better. And it would have a positive impact on your cash flow too. If you explain to customers that you're facing increased costs, everyone is, and we expect prices increasing due to the cost of living. But if you can do this at the same time as potentially explaining what else you're going to do to add more value, your customers are highly likely to not only accept the price rises, but be more happy with the service and more loyal as a result. Just ask yourself, what else can you do to add value to your clients in a way that they would appreciate? It would ideally cost you nothing, or worst case, cost you less than the additional profit you would make from the price rises. So let's go back to Alex and ask, how difficult is it and how long? And how long will it take you to increase prices by, say, 5% compared to, for example, increasing sales by 5%? And what would be the corresponding impact on the bottom line and your ability to pay that dividend? Now, we know sales last year were flat, a fraction over £1 million. Let's start by looking at the impact of working to increase sales volume by 5%. Let's assume this is during the period when Alex discovered, by testing, investing in pay-per-click Facebook advertising, we're generating leads that were converting to sales. Remember, Alex is posting marketing expenditure to overheads. So in this example, we're going to assume all ratios stay the same. We can see sales are up by just over £50,000. So with a 35% gross margin, we can see that 17.5K of the increased sale ends up as gross profit. With the increased marketing expenditure, with overheads still at 27% of revenue, we can see that just under £4,000 of the additional sales make their way to the bottom line. And this makes its way as an increased profit. Don't forget, if Alex does nothing about credit control, this will also have a negative impact on the cash flow. By contrast, let's look at increasing prices by 5% and see what happens. So firstly, we can see that the increase in the gross revenue is the same, a shade over £50,000. We can also see that this is a pure price rise, there is no increase in the cost of goods. This means the £50,000 increase in total revenue increased gross profit by the same amount, and has put us up from £350,000 to £400,000. As we have not had anything to do to increase the prices, the overheads are unchanged. Unchanged at 271,000, which means the profit impact is up by £50,000. £50,000 versus £4,000, I know which I'd rather have. And I know which one of the two options is the easiest and fastest. I mean, the 50K every time, we'll put it another way, every year, every time we increase your prices. So what else could we do to increase our profit margins? Another example is to use sales scripts. An example, a bed company always provides delivery free of charge. They discussed strategies with their accountant. So option A was to deliver, carry up to the bedroom, assemble and remove the old bed. Option B was to deliver, carry up to the bedroom only and remove the old bed. And option C was deliver only and remove the old bed if the customer had carried it downstairs. 100% of customers paid for one or other of the delivery options, but most opted for B. Example 2, complimentary sale to augment the main purchase. So when you bought your last smartphone, did you also buy a case or a screen protector or possibly a car charger? Chances are you purchased all three from another supplier because the company that sold you the phone did not execute an upsell strategy, making the purchase less profitable for them and somewhat less convenient for you as the customer. Not all products or services have the same cost and or gross margin. Let's stick to a fast food example we can all relate to. A burger might cost £1 to produce and sells for £4, so the gross margin is 75%. However, coffee, fizzy drinks and fries all cost next to nothing to produce. The low cost and high selling price means they're frequently being sold with a 90% or greater gross margin. So what happens when you come in for a burger, you're hungry, you're also thirsty, you added some small people and they offer a ice cream or a milkshake, all that at very high gross margins. What happens to your average gross margin? When the person serving sells the upsell script, offer the extras, as soon as you have all of the burgers, chances are you'll buy more than you intended. And by doing so, you increase the total sales value by a relatively trivial amount. The corresponding impact to the gross margin the supplier enjoys is dramatic. Know your numbers and use upsell scripts. Now you know your numbers and set about creating bundles to give your clients more choice. First, always try to give your clients choices, not the choice to purchase from you or someone else. Ideally, give them at least 3 choices to buy from you, you, or you, by offering small, medium, or large, a bronze, silver, or gold, or whatever you choose to call it. Us as humans are lazy, and our purchase decisions are not logical. Most of us will not invest much intellectual effort trying to work out which option is the best value for money. None of us want to be considered to be tight, and some of us will always be seen to purchase the biggest and the best. So let psychology work in your favour. The vast majority of customers will simply default to choose the middle option regardless. So provided you know your numbers, when you build your bundles, you will inevitably generate a significantly higher revenue and a greater gross margin than you would achieve if you only offered your best price. Another top tip is grounded in psychology. Use what is referred to as price anchoring. Always present your biggest and your best and your most expensive items first. This anchors the high price in your client's head and makes any prices presented subsequently appear inexpensive by comparison. You will see that this combination of upsell scripts, knowing your numbers, in particular what your gross margins are, and what things cost to sell is critical and essential to putting your bundles together. Make life easy and let psychology work in your favour. Some more practical examples for you to think about. An incentive to purchase more product at a greater value. Note the price gap between the medium and the large popcorn next time you go to the cinema, or the free coffee refills you get when you buy a special cup at a coffee shop. Popcorn and the coffee cost next to nothing compared to the increased revenue profit. Peace of mind to protect the investment. These include waterproofing spray for expensive boots, and service plans for electronics, convenience products strategically placed for impulse buys, batteries with your electronics, socks at the shoe store, small snacks or magazines at the grocery store checkouts, etc. Point of sale promotions encourages impulse buying. It can be a great value in making small ticket items available at your point of purchase. These are all other angles on the bundling strategy to increase gross margins. You should always seek to be sure you're enjoying the best possible terms from the suppliers that make up your cost of sales. Small improvement in purchase prices, and if possible slightly longer to pay, will potentially make a dramatic difference to your profit and your cash. Make sure you have time and a date in the diary to rediscuss prices with all suppliers and look to benchmark. As discussed, when we covered overheads, look to dual source, or at least look having a second supplier on standby and keep giving new potential suppliers an opportunity to bid for your custom. The new suppliers will frequently work much harder to gain your business, which gives you a price point to use in your negotiations with your suppliers. Have a think about this. How do you look at your supplier data? You need to know your numbers. Here's an example of Alex's cost of sales over the last 12 months. By tracking your numbers, ideally every month, you can red flag any cost of sales lines that are increasing when they shouldn't be. In this example, we can see that these 3 suppliers, 1, 9, and 3, have increased prices as a percentage of sales volume. As a total volume, it is not huge. This is perhaps not the number 1 priority. But what about the other supplier identified here as cost of sale 5? We can see that KPI Software purchased over £173,000 from them in the last 12 months, But more to the point, this has gone up by 1%. When we look at the variances as a percentage of revenue, so when we look at it, if Alex had been in there early to negotiate or find other ways to mitigate the price rise, the 10k increase in cost sales might potentially have been converted into a £10,000 decrease, which would have increased Alex's profit not by £10,000, but by £20,000. That is a 2% increase in gross margin. Is that reasonable? One would have thought so. Because the supplier with the highest purchase volume, here number 8, with £419,000, decreased prices by 0.9% as a percentage of revenue. Who's responsible for negotiating with your suppliers, and how frequently do you seek to renegotiate? And what could you do to achieve better purchase prices and terms from your suppliers? When you do sit down with your suppliers, do they ask you what you could potentially do for them to deliver a more competitive price and or service? Don't just think about price and payment terms. There may be other less obvious things your suppliers can do to help you reduce your total costs by dealing with them. For example, could they deliver direct to your customers using your packaging, saving you labor, shipping and storage costs? But the key thing here is that you must know your numbers, and review them regularly. Do you have a corporate social responsibility strategy? For example, every time someone purchases something from you, do you have a strategy to give something back, i.e. to those who cannot fend for themselves? For example, if you knew that every time you purchased a cup of coffee, a small child in Africa would be supplied with clean drinking water for a day, would that influence your decision as to your choice of supplier? We could take this one step further. If that clean drinking water cost you just 1p and you sold your coffee for £2.83 instead of £2.75, that would potentially increase sales and increase profit and ensure a small child in Africa could access clean drinking water for a day. If you want a quick and easy way to achieve this, you might want to check out Buy One, Give One. They make it super easy to contribute to good causes. They make a real difference to people, and they do it in a way that should also increase your own sales and profitability. Win-win all round. How do you track and report on your gross margin performance? Let's look at some examples. You can see what happened to Alex's gross margin in the last 12 months. Sitting at 35%, a 1% improvement from this time last year. We can also see that in the most recent quarter, the company has managed to achieve an average margin of 39%. That should prompt an immediate question: is that level of gross profit sustainable for the next 12 months? We have to treat the margin in the most recent month with a degree of caution, unless the bookkeeping is accurate. And up to date, we may have a problem. With rubbish in, rubbish out, so we need to ask if all of the costs for the most recent month have been entered and accounted for correctly in accounts. Back to the correct treatment of overheads versus cost of sales. If we then look at what has been happening over the last year by looking at the 12-month rolling margin, we can see it has been wobbling between 36.8 and 32.5%. We can then look at each of these in the last four quarters and see how the margin has moved. So there has been some massive swings, up by nearly 10%, but also down as much as 6.3%. If we keep digging, we can see there are huge variances in the month compared to the previous month, and then the same in the month in the prior year. There's also a massive difference in the last quarter compared to the prior quarter and the same quarter last year. But the last 6 months is showing less volatility. Let's look at KPI performance year to date for the company as a whole. Looking to operations, we can see that the financial year to date, gross profit margin has been 40%, a slight reduction for the month of May. Good news, it would appear we should be planning on at least a 40% margin for the full year, and that is before we have initiated any activities to improve it still further. As you can hear, the focus really needs to be on the future. Forecasting is more of an art than a science. It is extremely important to plan and to budget. That allows you to then track your actual performance versus your forecast month by month to track how the business is performing. Only by planning and reporting actual performance versus forecast can you identify when things are going wrong and where to focus to correct or respond appropriately to the situation. So we have our initial estimate. This is what we have actually achieved this month. Some variations, but the overall, we are more or less on plan. But if we know we have activities planned to improve margins over the remaining months of the year, we can adjust our forecast, understand what will happen if our margin improves by 0.5% each month for the remainder of the year. We look to work towards that 39% in the last period. And then we can review performance at monthly management review meetings. So taking this example, we have a brief narrative that explains to the management team what happened in words. For those that don't like to look at the detail, we can highlight the key numbers. Margin was only 27.7 in December. Is that good or bad? Bad. It was 9.8% lower than the forecast for that month. But overall, we're only down by 0.1% to date. For those that want to know the full detail for analysis and planning purposes, we can see the table building up month by month, showing actual forecast and variance in pounds and percentages. And we can see what our forecast is for the remaining months of this financial year. We don't want to try to micromanage everything. We just need to focus management time and activity on the things that matter. So you can see here, there are more red. The bigger the problem, what has happened in September and December. Finally, we can see it graphically, how we performed each month in the year to date, and the forecast for the rest of the financial year. So now we have lots of things we can do to improve our margin. Let's look at Alex's key challenge, getting their cash position sorted and that dividend paid, so peace and harmony can be restored at home and at work. What would happen if Alex was able to make small improvements to the company's gross margin over time? By now, we should be familiar with Alex's profit and loss for the last 2 years and the projection for next year. Here we can see that if we only focus on one driver, improving the gross margin, and maintain that 4% improvement that we've seen in the past, this will improve the bottom line profit by £40,000. That 4% improvement increases the bank balance by £37,000. Having looked at overheads, cash flow drivers, and gross margin, let's look at the impact of next year's results if we move all three at the same time. By focusing on just these three input drivers, so a 4% increase in margin, a 4% decrease in costs, getting debtor and creditor days more in line with each other, we can see the profit will more than double. It's up from 79,000 to nearly 160. We also reduced our debtor days and increased our debtor to creditor days to bring in more money from work invoiced and save cash by settling creditors later. And better still, by not focusing on sales, we have also improved the cash position by a massive £180,000 from 53 in the red to a positive 127. And in all, probably even better because we will no longer be paying interest or fees on that £53,000 overdraft. So that's it. We've now covered 3 out of the 7 key business growth drivers: overheads or quick win cash flow and margins. And in the next weeks, we'll come over the acquisition, retention, transaction value, and frequency. I know there's quite a lot in that session, but if there are any questions, has anyone got any? There's quite a lot of detail in there. Obviously, a lot of that can be put together, but those reports are things that will come from the system when we integrate to your accounting software. So they're not just going to be figures thrown in the air. Once you've got a decent set of accounts, that will pull in and help you to figure out where areas of change can happen. So did any of that make sense to anybody? I know there's a lot to it.
Yeah, David, thanks for that. I like the add-ons. I think that's a really good, really good thing that I could look at. Some of the kind of little upsell things. I've already done this kind of small, medium, large, and that made a massive difference to the conversations that I was having with customers, because it's not, do you want to buy or not? It's, actually what out of these options are the best fit for you. So it just totally shifts the conversation. It's been really helpful for me. But yeah, the add-on thing I hadn't really thought about. So I think that's going to be the next step. Yeah, really helpful.
So
thank you.
we could always have a chat about it, see if we can help you with that as well.
Sounds good.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to say it's incredible when you can see that such a small movement in one area can make such a massive impact overall. I honestly, until I started listening to these sessions, I didn't appreciate or realise just how much a small difference can make in one area.
Yeah,
really good.
And the thing is, like I said, there's a lot of detail in these sessions, and obviously we're covering them quite fast. But we're here for questions after as well. They are up to rewatch because we're trying to fit them into an hour. And if you think about it, you're never going to change all of that in an hour anyway. There is a lot to think about. But I'm glad that the session has been helpful. At least that's what it's there to do. It's just to spark a thought in your mind that, I need to sort that out. That's what I need to do to build the business. And it's what everyone wants to do. No one wants to have those issues.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
With you guys, what do you think would be a key takeaway from the session that you would want to implement in the next week or so? I know Tim mentioned your takeaway. What other takeaways has people got?
For me, it's what I've thought about for a long time, but haven't really done very much about is pushing add-ons to what I offer, because that's a really quick win for me, and it's just purely because I forget more than anything else. So I do have a client relationship management system, which I complete with each customer that phones me or contacts me in any way. So I'm going to try and use prompts in there, build prompts in there to prompt me to ask those questions, because I know that if I did, quite a few customers would probably take me up on it. So it's a really quick win for me.
Excellent. That's where you've got to drill into yourself, is that you just have to do it every time. It's just remembering, because that's an easy loss for you.
Yeah.
If you can just like at the end of these sessions where we say, come back for next week. If we don't do it, people may not remember. It's just, and once you've said it a couple of times to people, they may even say to you, "You've forgotten to say it to me, did you?" About the upsell, or even it gets to the point where those burger chains, etc. People just know now that they probably don't even have to be asked. That is just what they want, because that's what they offer.
Yeah.
But definitely worth having a look. But if you want to have a chat about anything, just send us an email, give us a call.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, how many of you, from an owner's perspective, we know that knowledge is power, and you can then use that to drive decision-making processes within the company. How many of you have visibility of exactly how your margins are progressing within the company? Do you have reports that you pull off and see what's going on? How are you making decisions going forward based upon, in this example, gross margin?
Well, I can tell you that I have the information and I look at the information, but I didn't really know what it meant. So again, today's been really useful, because I've been looking at the gross margins on my business for about a year now, because I use Xero and they have this great dashboard. But as you say, the input has got to be accurate, and I think it pretty much is. So I've been noticing that over the last 12 months, but and I've been seeing it go up, which I knew was a really positive thing. But I hadn't really appreciated just how important that is. So that's me.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, so I suppose it's whether you understand what the figures mean as well. It's all well and good to say it's gone up, but is it correct? 2, is it relevant? And 3, there's always things that could be missing, and that's where certain businesses they think they're doing well, but that's because the data is incorrect. So you might make the incorrect decisions. So we could definitely have a look at some things for you and explain it to you in a fashion that works for you.
Brilliant.
I do think on that a bit of drill down is helpful, because as went down, which on the face of it you'd say, hold on, big problem, but actually it's because we were selling more reseller services where the margin's low, but it was all new business. So the margin was going down, but actually we were making more gross profit. So it's great as a start point, but I think to your point, David, really to get real value out of it, you need to kind of do that bit of drill down on it.
Yeah, definitely. Because and also it's going to be different where you've got new customers and new services going on, because that's going to affect it year on year. But if you've got a set thing happening, your upsell, you've got the same products happening every year, your variances year on year are related to the same thing, then you've got a good picture of what you can do next. But it's still not a bad thing to have obviously new products changing things.
I think as long as you know the reasons why those changes have occurred, it's important. So if they are going down, why they're going down, and if you're in control of that, that's absolutely fine. But if you don't know it and you aren't in control, that's a whole different story, a whole different conversation to have. So it's about understanding the numbers, knowing why they're going up or down, because going up could be a bad thing as well, potentially, because you could be relying potentially on old legacy products that could be phased out, in which case there's a false sense of security. So understanding numbers is critical. And what we're really hoping for in these sessions is to help you focus on the low-hanging fruit, rather than climbing 3 stories up to pick the nice juicy apple at the top. There are hundreds and hundreds of other juicy apples further down, which are much easier to get. And growing and developing a business, people tend to think about growth and sales and turnover, but actually it's a much easier way of growing a business first before we start pressing that sales and marketing button. So I'm hoping that these sessions will help really instill in you guys that there are much easier ways of making your business more efficient and growing it in a better way before you going out and actually increasing the size of the company.
So if everyone's happy, and I'm going to finish off this week. So this is where we are. We've now covered 5 out of 12. So we've covered gross margin and cost control, and next week we'll look at reducing the customer attrition. So please get to the website, book for week 6, promote this as much as possible for anyone who you believe would benefit from the sessions, anyone who thinks they know their numbers in their business but actually doesn't, or would just like to know a bit more. That'd be great. You and they can also view the previous sessions online, and feel free to catch up or rerun through anything, because I do know we've gone through quite a lot today in the past sessions. And again, just a little bit of homework if you're up for it. And this may be a bit harder than the last one. So can you work out your customers lost last year? So the number and the percentage. Can you work out your customers lost this year? Numbers and percentage again. And finally, what would be your target for improvement or variance between those? And again, just thanks from us for attending, guys, and hope you enjoyed the session.